Welcome to day 5 of week 1 e-learning. We're going to begin by looking at our performance task, which is what we need to be able to do in today's lesson. All week long we've been focusing on this performance task, and each day has been building up to make sure that we're ready. I will need to be able to summarize a text by using key details to support the important events and parts. Also, I will need to be able to identify the main idea within the text and use key details to support my answers. The 15 words that we're focusing on this week: duty, route, proposed, core, clumsy, landmark, supplies, history, journal, valley, territory, accompany, interpreter, expedition, journey. Our day 5 essential questions. How can I determine what key details are within the biography? How can I summarize what I read in the text in my own words? How can I answer questions about the person I read about? Today's task will be reading about Pocahontas, and as you're reading about Pocahontas, you need to figure out what is the main idea in the biography, and you also need to go back and look for key details. What are some important details that tell more about the main idea in your biography? Make sure you go back and find specific information that's going to tell more about what you need to look for in your assignment. Here's a short video, 3 minutes and 22 seconds, true story of Pocahontas. Take time to listen to some key details about Pocahontas because you may be able to use that as well in any of your questions or assignments that you have for today.
Daughter to Chief Powhatan, the ruler of her tribe. She lived in Virginia, a real Southern girl, a Powhatan Indian in harmony with the world. She was nicknamed Playful, which is what Pocahontas means. A flower between the hills was her real name. Matoaka they called her, later Amanute as a teen. When she met English explorers, her entire life changed. Nicknamed Pocahontas, real name Matoaka, Disney famous princess, but do we really know her? Will the real Pocahontas please stand up? Let's examine history so we can see what's what.
Legend moves the mighty mountains with beauty deeper than the skin. Her spirit lives in the four corners of the wind. And with her charm, she can calm the alarm and save from harm those who need her grace.
At 10 years old, she met Englishman John Smith, the famous captain of the Jamestown colonists. While exploring, he was captured by the Powhatan tribe. Years later, he claimed that Pocahontas saved his life. Was this true? Was he confused? Historians still debate. Regardless of the claim, Pocahontas remains great. With her servants, she brought food to the starving colonists. Without care from Pocahontas, the colonists could not persist. Nicknamed Pocahontas, real name Matoaka, Disney famous princess, but do we really know her? Her compassion and care kept Jamestown alive. She brought food from her village to help settlers survive.
Legend moves the mighty mountains with beauty deeper than the skin. Her spirit lives in the four corners of the wind. And with her charm, she can calm the alarm and save from harm those who need her grace.
In 1613, Pocahontas was kidnapped. by an English captain to ransom his men back. Captive for a year, she learned much about the English. Then in 1614, she married a colonist. Later, with husband John Rolfe, she met the king and queen. Presented as a princess, Pocahontas stole the scene. On her return home, Pocahontas became sick. She passed away, leaving us her legend and spirit. Nicknamed Pocahontas, real name Atoa, Disney famous princess, but do we really know her? Her marriage to John Rolfe brought her people peace. For a time, English and Powhatan conflict ceased.
Legend moves the mighty mountains with beauty deeper than the skin. The spirit lives in the four corners of the wind. And with her charm, she can calm the alarm and save from harm those who need her grace.
In your biography today, the biography is Pocahontas. Her occupation, or her job, was a Native American princess. She was born 1595 in the Werowocomoco, Virginia. Died March of 1617 in Gravesend, England. She is best known for saving Captain John Smith and marrying John Rolfe. Growing up, Pocahontas was born the daughter of the chief of the Powhatan people. Historians estimate that she was born around the year 1595. Her father was more than just the chief of a small tribe. He was chief of a large confederation of Native Americans that populated much of eastern Virginia. Despite being the chief's daughter, Pocahontas' childhood would have been similar to most Native American girls. She would have lived in a thatched roof hut, learned how to make a fire and cook, search for food such as berries and nuts in the woods, and play games with other children. As far as we know, Pocahontas had a peaceful and happy childhood. Strangers arrive. When Pocahontas was around 12 years old, strange men arrived from a faraway land. They were English settlers. They established the settlement of Jamestown on an island on the edge of the Powhatan lands. They wore metal armor and had guns that made a loud noise when fired. The relationship between the Powhatan and the strangers was tense. Sometimes they traded with the strangers, and other times they fought with them. Captain John Smith. One day, the leader of the Jamestown settlement, Captain John Smith, was taken captive by some of her father's warriors. According to legend, Chief Powhatan was going to have John Smith killed when Pocahontas came to his rescue. She pleaded to her father to spare Smith's life. Her father agreed and let Captain Smith go. After Pocahontas had rescued John Smith, the relationship between the Powhatan and the settlers improved. They traded with each other, and Pocahontas visited Jamestown Fort often to talk to John Smith. In 1609, John Smith was injured in a gunpowder accident and had to return to England. The relationship between the Powhatan and the settlers once again turned to violence. Captured. In 1613, Pocahontas was taken captive by English Captain Samuel Argall. He told Pocahontas' father that he would exchange her for the release of some English prisoners being held by the Powhatan. The negotiation between the two parties went on for some time. While being held captive, Pocahontas met tobacco farmer John Rolfe and fell in love. Even after her father paid the ransom, she decided to stay with the English. On April 5th, 1614, she married John Rolfe at the church in Jamestown. Around a year later, she gave birth to a son named Thomas. Life in England. A few years later, after getting married, Pocahontas and John Rolfe sailed to London. While in London, Pocahontas was treated like a princess. She dressed in fancy clothes, went to fabulous parties, and met King James I of England. She even got to meet with John Smith, who she thought was dead. Death and legacy. Pocahontas and John Rolfe had planned to sail back to Virginia. Unfortunately, Pocahontas became very sick as they were preparing to set sail. She died in March of 1617 in Gravesend, England. Interesting facts about Pocahontas. Pocahontas was a nickname meaning the naughty one. As a child, she was given the name Matakoa. As she grew older, she was called Amanut. She was one of Chief Powhatan's favorite daughters and was called his delight and darling. Before marrying John Rolfe, Pocahontas was baptized and took the Christian name Rebecca. Pocahontas often brought food to the Jamestown colonists and may have saved many of them from starvation. The Disney animated film Pocahontas was released in 1995. In the movie, there is a romance between John Smith and Pocahontas. However, there is no historical evidence that they were anything but more than friends. In your Day 5 assignment, you're going to need to make sure you do the summary of the Pocahontas biography, answer the questions, and then complete a Venn diagram. Your summary needs to make sure you have a beginning sentence that states what the main idea of the biography was, and then your other sentences that go with it should be specific details from the text explaining more about it. Your questions are text-dependent questions. You need to go back into the biography and find your questions and answer them in complete sentences. Your Venn diagram. You've learned about 3 people this week: Sacagawea, Abraham Lincoln, and Pocahontas. Take time to pick 2 of those people and then complete a Venn diagram given at least 2 ways that they're the same, at least 2 ways that they're different. You do not have to write complete sentences on your Venn diagram. In your work packet, you have the Pocahontas biography that we just read as a group. Then you have your place where you need to write your summary. The directions are there again just in case if you need a reminder. When you scroll down, you do find your questions. Some of your questions are short responses, which means I need complete sentences and details. If they're multiple choice and you're doing it on the computer, you could highlight it and make it bold, or highlight it and change the color of the font if you choose. Question number 1. How was Pocahontas' childhood similar or the same to your childhood? Go back into the biography, into the section where it talked about her childhood. Find out how her childhood and your childhood are somewhat the same. Number 2, read this sentence. The relationship between the Powhatan and the strangers was tense. What does the word tense mean? If you need a clue, go back into the article where it talks about when John Smith left and a new captain took over. Think about that area of the text for some really important clues to help explain what that word tense might mean. Question 3. It is a multiple choice answer. One answer is the correct answer. In the section, strangers arrive. Why were the new people that arrived strange compared to the Native Americans that already lived there? A, they were Native Americans that wore metal armor for protection. B, they were white people dressed as Native Americans. C, they looked just like Native Americans, but they carried guns. D, they were white people that wore armor and had guns. Question 4. What happened to get the 2 groups to work with each other without violence? A, they signed a contract to be nice to each other. B, Pocahontas rescued John Smith and returned him to his people. C, they played a game and they decided that they could get along. D, they captured Pocahontas and John Smith rescued her. Question 5. What happened to Pocahontas in 1613? A, she became a princess and helped with the 2 groups getting along better. B, She worked for her father and she was the next chief to take over. C. She was captured and held for a trade to free English prisoners. D. She ran away and married John Smith. Once you've completed your questions, you need to make sure you take time to look at your Venn diagram and pick either Sacagawea, Abraham Lincoln, or Pocahontas. You need to pick two of them and complete a Venn diagram. Tell how two of them were the same at least two different ways. Tell how those two were also different, two specific different ways. Once you finish your assignment, you may work on your writing assignment, which is right underneath that section. This week, I'm asking that students at least have a BMME, a beginning, a middle, and an end. You need to read the three sources that you have about volunteering, and then you need to go down to your prompt that's also listed within the packet. The packet that you have for your prompt, it states, write an informative essay explaining the impact of volunteering in communities. If you're not sure what volunteering means, it means you're giving your time and you're not getting paid for it. You're doing it because you feel it's the right thing to do. So read the three articles and decide on a BMME what is something good that you can pull from the articles, and make sure in your beginning you state clearly what your writing is going to be about. You may use some of the same words from your prompt in your beginning, but make sure in your middles you have some good details, something that you can tell more about. Next week, we're going to dig a little deeper into the writing of volunteering, so make sure you have that ready. Your BMME can be done on a piece of notebook paper, or you may do it right here on the Microsoft Word document if you choose. When you get done with all of your assignments, please make sure you save them to your computer and upload them. If you did it on a piece of notebook paper, make sure you take a photo of them and turn them in. We are going to be looking at daily assignments counting as daily grades. Your work today should show that you understand how to read a biography, identify the main idea, and pull out key details to tell more about your main idea. If you have any questions about today's lesson, please make sure you take time to send a message to your teachers and ask us, and we'll do our best to respond back to you to answer your questions. Thank you for participating in Day 5 of our e-learning lessons.